Welcome back to World Extreme Medicine. This is a World Extreme Medicine 2024 conference teaser with Harrison Carter. What we're going to do in the episode is really just take a look behind the curtains at some of the excellent speaker lineup for the World Extreme Medicine Conference in 2024 from the 16th to the 18th of November. So today we have Harrison Carter with us. Harrison, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I wondered if we could just start, Harrison, just by getting a little bit of the background from you.
Yeah, of course. So what I do now is I work on the bridge between sort of novel finance and wildlife conservation. Hopefully kind of using finance to expand and increase the impact of conservation work in light of the biodiversity crisis. And like if that sounds strange, it's because I think largely it is a bit strange, which is I think why I'm a bit strange in the background, which defines that. So I used to be an investment banker in London, then I was a management consultant. And then, coronavirus for me was provided a silver lining of time to reflect on what I was doing. And I felt like at the time I was young enough without any real responsibilities to just go a bit crazy. And those were my drivers behind making a jump. And the jump that I made was to go and do a master's degree in something that I really cared about, which was biodiversity conservation. And I absolutely fell in love with my degree, but had a real kind of sense of imposter syndrome that I know that so many people have when they do new things, surrounded by everyone who's done their A-level biology, their undergrad biology, suddenly hitting masters, and the acronyms are flying over my head. And all of those sort of interdisciplinary benefits that I thought I might carry suddenly feeling very redundant. But after, shockingly short amount of time, perhaps 2, 3, 4 weeks, I found my niche, and all of the things that I was really embarrassed about my background, I realized actually were my superpowers. And now what I do, I'm doing my doctorate at Oxford in the UK, working on these novel financial mechanisms that bridge the gap between my different careers to date. And the benefit that this has had for me hasn't just been professional, though like it has been professional, but it's also been personal. I really feel like I do my dream job now. And it's a really, really weird road, and there's a much more efficient and streamlined version of that. And so, if I can inspire someone in the audience to do kind of a more efficient version of that, that's what they're after, then that's my aim for the talk.
Listen, that's fantastic, Harrison, because like you said, it's really pointed you in the way of not only using your prior knowledge and understanding, but just something that you absolutely care about and fundamentally want to improve, which is fantastic because it's combining two things which really align with your desires, really, and indeed with improving the planet. Could I get you to just speak on a couple of key talking points, Harrison, and indeed challenges that people can expect to hear about from your talk?
Yeah, definitely. So I think first and foremost, in a little bit of valuable context, because the talk's grounded in my experience, hopefully with lessons that are far wider reaching. But we're going to learn a little bit about biodiversity. I remember when I first came across this word, I couldn't quite understand what the value of it was. I knew it was important, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. And it's a word now that I use, every single day, with very, very important words before biodiversity and very, very scary words after it. So I think it's important to kind of ground everyone in kind of what we're dealing with there. And then also, I think some of the challenges that I've experienced along my way might be really useful for others. So, for example, how do you define yourself in your job? Is it your job description, or is it the capabilities that you have to carry that out? Because for me, when I stripped back the branding of my job role and I looked at what I did, I realized that I could have applied that in a whole different setting. And in my context, an entirely different industry, making a jump that people don't make, or maybe sensibly sometimes. But in my case, the jump was great. And the reason why the jump was good for me, and the jump is a key talking point as well that I'll be talking about later in the year, is I didn't really jump. I just built a bridge. And that's so much better than jumping because the jump implies it's one directional. And in the jump, you could miss your target and fall down. But on a bridge, it might take slightly longer. But then at least you know how to traverse your worlds, which allows you to walk back, stand in the middle, go to different weightings on either side. And all of those things together, I think, will help us become more interdisciplinary. We know we're going to be doing more than one career in our professional lifespans. And I think whether you're into biodiversity or not, this kind of bridge building over jump taking might be really, really useful. But the context of this for me will be a little bit between biodiversity and finance consulting in my background.
Listen, that's fantastic, Harrison. That's absolutely fantastic. And just to finally finish off, just you've already spoken to some key takeaway points just around building bridges rather than these fundamental jumps, and so you're almost not burning your bridges, so to speak, in your in that context. Could you maybe just leave the listeners with some key takeaway points for the talk?
Principally, biodiversity underpins human well-being. We say that you can't put a value on nature, which probably is true. But if you didn't have any biodiversity, you wouldn't have any people. And so we can largely say that biodiversity is worth the market capitalization of the world, because without it, we wouldn't be here. Now, the question is, to what degree, to what imperfection do you put on this to drive a pragmatic change today? So we'll be talking a little bit about biodiversity, the idea of valuing biodiversity, all of the uncomfortable topics that come with that, and what claims you can make about it in the context of like offsets and all the controversy that surrounds that, because that's now where I sit. And I love talking about it. But also the drivers that push me to make my jump or bridge building, so to speak. And I think that me being a little bit younger, I didn't feel the responsibility, or at least a heavy responsibility, to kind of make that career jump that might be holding back some other audience members from fulfilling their perfect career path. But I think from having made it, I realized that those weights wouldn't have impacted me to the same degree that I thought that they might have at the time. And I think that reflecting on those lessons could be really, really fascinating for someone that wants to kind of change up what they do. And then finally, it would be a case of really, really pushing audience members to reflect on how they think about themselves, their own skill sets, what they do in their job as opposed to what their job says, and helping them expand their horizon as to, well, where could this be applied? And one of the fascinating things that I learned from my career transition, and I can even leave it at this point, is no one was more afraid of someone picking out their weaknesses in a career transition across industries than me. I was so aware that I didn't know enough to make the change. I was so aware that I was jumping too early, and I was sat across my interview table with others who I was expecting to kind of pull me apart. And all I was met with, and maybe I got very lucky with who I spoke to, but all I was met with was excitement, optimism. They could see the opportunities clearer than I could. And I realized it was all in my own head, and that value was a perspective driven piece, as long as you can evidence base what you do. So some of the takeaways will be along these lines.
Hugely beneficial, hugely beneficial. And like you said before, Harrison, it maps across, doesn't actually matter which background you come from because there's some universal principles there that you speak to. So that
That's it.
sounds absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So if you want to hear more from Harrison, please do check out the World Extreme Medicine Conference this November from the 16th to 18th of November, where you'll hear the full speaker lineup, but you'll also hear Harrison Carter speak in full. Many thanks, Harrison, for your time today. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and come along. It's going to be fun.